The security guard's hand was on Maya Johnson's arm when the live stream hit 10,000 viewers. "Ma'am, you need to leave, now!" Maya stayed seated in the ER waiting room, blood still trickling from the gash on her forehead. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I'm a patient. I was in a car accident 90 minutes ago. I'm bleeding. I have a right to treatment." Nurse Patricia Walsh stepped forward, phone in hand, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "We've already explained your insurance information doesn't match our system. We can't verify coverage. There are free clinics that can—" "I don't need a free clinic. I need basic first aid, which is required by federal law." Patricia's face flushed. "Are you threatening this hospital?" "I'm stating the law." Across the waiting room, a young mother named Jennifer held up her phone. The red recording dot glowed. Comments flooded her screen. "Is this real? Someone call the news. This is discrimination." Patricia noticed the phones. Her confidence cracked for half a second, but she recovered, smiled, turned to the security guard. "She's trespassing. Call the police." Maya didn't move, didn't argue, just sat there, recording on her own phone, watching the system do exactly what she'd suspected it would do. In her jacket pocket, a badge, a bar card, credentials that could end this in 10 seconds. She kept them hidden. Because sometimes the only way to prove a system is broken is to let it break you first. When is silence more powerful than speaking up? And what does it cost? The police were 3 minutes away. Maya had 3 minutes to decide if she'd been right to wait this long. 12 hours earlier, Maya Johnson had been someone else entirely. Not a bleeding patient in an ER waiting room. Not a woman being denied care. She'd been Maya Johnson, Esquire, senior attorney at the Civil Rights Legal Defense Fund, sitting in her downtown office reviewing case files. Specifically, health care discrimination complaints. 14 of them. All filed against hospitals in the metro area over the past 18 months. All alleging the same pattern: black patients, particularly women, denied care or treated with hostility in emergency rooms. Every complaint followed the same script. They said my insurance didn't work. They told me to go somewhere else. They made me wait hours while white patients with less serious conditions were seen first. They treated me like I was lying about my pain. Maya had read hundreds of these complaints in her 10-year career. She'd won cases, changed policies, secured settlements. But something about this cluster bothered her. All 14 complaints were dismissed, not settled, not investigated. Dismissed. The hospital's defense was always the same. No evidence of discriminatory intent, isolated incidents. Staff followed protocol. Translation: prove it. That's why Maya had been driving to St. Margaret's Hospital that night at 11:47 p.m. Not as a patient, as an investigator. She'd planned to sit in the ER waiting room for a few hours. Observe. Document patterns. Talk to patients. Build a case the hospitals couldn't dismiss. Then a truck ran a red light at Riverside and 8th. Maya's car spun. Her head hit the side window. Glass shattered. When she finally pulled over, blood ran down her temple. The world tilted sideways. Her phone screen was cracked, but it still worked. She could have called James. Her husband would have left the hospital in the middle of his shift, picked her up, treated her wound himself in some private exam room where no one would question her insurance or make her wait. But that would have defeated the entire purpose. Maya looked at herself in the rearview mirror. Blood, dizziness, torn jacket, shattered phone. She looked exactly like the women in those 14 complaints. This wasn't how she'd planned to investigate St. Margaret's, but it was perfect. She drove herself to the ER, walked through the automatic doors at 11:52 p.m., and became invisible. Not Maya Johnson, attorney. Not Mrs. James Johnson, wife of the chief of emergency medicine. Just another black woman, bleeding and asking for help in a system that had 14 documented reasons not to give it. She sat down in the waiting room and started her timer. The complaint files said the pattern started within the first 30 minutes. Maya would give them 2 hours. If nothing happened, she'd reveal who she was, get treated, and go home. But if the complaints were right, if the discrimination was real, then she'd have everything she needed. Not second-hand testimony, first-hand evidence. Maya had 3 rules she'd learned the hard way in 10 years of civil rights law. Rule 1. The system only changes when it can't deny what it did. Testimony was easy to dismiss. She misunderstood. She was emotional. She's exaggerating. But video? Documentation? Recorded conversations? Those were harder to explain away. That's why Maya always carried 2 phones, why she documented everything, why she taught every client to do the same. They won't believe what they can't see, she told them, so make them see. Tonight, she was following her own advice. Rule 2. Power used prematurely is power wasted. Maya could have walked into St. Margaret's and announced herself, flashed her bar card, mentioned her husband's name, demanded immediate treatment. The staff would have scrambled, apologized, treated her like royalty, and learned absolutely nothing. Because the problem wasn't how they treated Maya Johnson, attorney. The problem was how they treated everyone who wasn't Maya Johnson, attorney. The women who didn't have credentials, who didn't have powerful husbands, who didn't know their rights. If Maya used her power to escape the discrimination, she'd just be proving that the system worked for people like her. She needed to prove the opposite. Rule 3. Justice delayed for one person is justice denied for everyone. Maya thought about the 14 dismissed complaints. 14 women who'd experienced exactly what she was experiencing now. They'd filed complaints, followed procedures, told their stories, and been dismissed as liars. Not because their stories weren't true, because they couldn't prove them in a way the system would accept. Maya could prove it. She had the education, the resources, the training to document everything the right way, to build a case that couldn't be dismissed, but only if she waited, only if she let it happen. Some battles can't be won by fighting. They can only be won by witnessing, by standing in the harm long enough that no one can deny it existed. She'd never said that out loud, never written it in a brief. It was just the truth she'd learned sitting across from clients who'd been told their pain didn't matter, their experiences didn't count, their voices didn't deserve to be heard. Maya sat in the ER waiting room, bleeding, watching the clock. 30 minutes. No one had checked on her. 45 minutes. A white patient with a sprained ankle was called back. 60 minutes. Her head throbbed. The dizziness worsened. She could stop this anytime. 1 sentence. I'm an attorney, and my husband is your chief of emergency medicine. The question was, how much harm would she let herself experience to prove that harm existed? Maya had 2 deadlines. The first was immediate, her head injury. She'd taken pre-med courses before law school, knew enough to recognize the symptoms. Dizziness, blurred vision at the edges, the metallic taste in her mouth that suggested possible concussion. Head trauma had a window. 6 hours, maybe less, before minor became serious. Before you should get that checked became, you need emergency intervention. She checked her phone. 12:47 a.m. She'd been bleeding for an hour and 5 minutes. The second deadline was professional and exponentially more complicated. In 16 hours at 5 p.m. tomorrow, Maya had a status conference before federal judge Marianne Keating. The hearing would determine whether her current case Williams versus Metro Health System could proceed as a class action. If Maya secured class certification, 47 patients could sue Metro Health together for a pattern of discriminatory care. The case would be national news. Hospital systems across the country would be forced to audit their practices. If she lost certification, each plaintiff would have to sue individually. Most couldn't afford it. Most would give up. The pattern would continue, unchallenged. Judge Keating was notoriously unsympathetic to civil rights claims she deemed insufficiently documented. Last month, she'd dismissed a housing discrimination case, writing, "Anecdotal testimony, however compelling, does not constitute systematic evidence of discriminatory intent." Maya had spent 6 months building the Metro Health case precisely to meet Keating's standard. Hospital records, statistical analysis, expert testimony, pattern documentation. But Keating's core argument remained. How do you prove someone was discriminated against when the hospital claims it was just following standard procedures? Maya had struggled with that question for months. Until tonight. Now, sitting in St. Margaret's ER, she realized she was living the answer. If she could document exactly how standard procedures became tools of discrimination, how insurance couldn't be verified, how medical need was questioned, how patients were told to go elsewhere, she wouldn't need to argue theory. She'd have proof, real-time, recorded, undeniable. The kind of evidence even Judge Keating couldn't dismiss. But she needed to stay conscious long enough to get it. Her phone showed 12:52 a.m. She had approximately 4 hours and 8 minutes before head trauma became a medical emergency. She had 16 hours before the hearing that would determine whether 47 people got justice or got dismissed. And she had 90 minutes of discrimination documented on her phone. The math was brutal. Every minute she waited increased both the evidence and the danger. How long could she let this continue before the cost became too high? Her head pounded. The waiting room swam in her vision. Across the room, Nurse Patricia Walsh was laughing with a colleague, completely unbothered by the bleeding woman she'd refused to treat. Maya hit record on her phone again. 4 hours, maybe less. She'd count every minute. At 1:14 a.m., a resident doctor walked through the waiting room. Young, maybe 28. White coat still crisp. ID badge. Dr. Michael Chen, emergency medicine resident. He glanced at Maya, then did a double take. "Excuse me, how long have you been waiting?" "An hour and 22 minutes. Dr. Chen's eyes widened when he saw the blood on her temple. "You're bleeding. Has anyone assessed you?" "I gave my information at intake. They said they'd call me." He pulled out his tablet, scanned something, frowned. "What's your name?" "Maya Johnson." His frown deepened. He looked at her, then back at the screen, then at the intake desk where Patricia Walsh was deliberately not looking their way. "Stay here," he said quietly. Maya watched him walk to the desk. His voice was low, but in the 2 a.m. quiet of the waiting room, sound carried. "Patricia, why hasn't this patient been triaged? She has a visible head laceration." Patricia's response was loud enough to be intentional. "Insurance issue. We're waiting for verification." "She's bleeding. EMTALA requires—" "I'm aware of EMTALA, Dr. Chen. I'm following protocol." "Protocol is immediate triage regardless of insurance. Are you questioning my 30 years of nursing experience?" Dr. Chen hesitated. Maya could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Resident versus senior nurse, first year versus 3 decades. The power dynamic was obvious. "I'm just saying." "Then don't. Unless you want to discuss this with the nursing supervisor. Or would you prefer I mention to Dr. Morrison that you're interfering with intake procedures?" Dr. Morrison, the residency director, the person who controlled Dr. Chen's entire career trajectory. Dr. Chen's jaw tightened. He looked back at Maya. She gave him the slightest nod. "It's okay. I understand." He walked away, but not before Maya saw him pull out his phone and start typing something. That exchange told Maya 3 things. 1. This wasn't an isolated incident. Dr. Chen recognized the pattern immediately. He'd seen this before. 2. The discrimination had institutional protection. Patricia knew exactly how to weaponize hierarchy to shut down intervention. 3. There were people inside the system who knew it was broken. Maya opened her phone's voice memo app, replayed the exchange she'd recorded. Patricia's voice, crystal clear. Insurance issue. We're waiting for verification. Then later. Are you questioning my 30 years of experience? Maya labeled the file. Evidence _003_ staff intimidation _O114 AM. She also noticed something else. When Dr. Chen had looked at his tablet, his face had shown confusion, like her name or information triggered something unexpected. He'd started to ask her name, then stopped himself. What did he see on that screen? Maya's phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. I'm sorry. Document everything. Someone is watching. The message disappeared 5 seconds later. Auto-delete. Maya's heartbeat quickened. Someone inside the hospital was paying attention. The question was, ally or threat? And more importantly, if Dr. Chen had seen something unusual on her chart, something about her identity, how long before someone else noticed? Her carefully maintained anonymity had a timer. She just didn't know how much time was left. At 1:33 a.m., a young woman rushed through the ER doors carrying a toddler. The child was crying, wheezing, struggling to breathe. Please, someone help. My son, he can't breathe. He has asthma and... Patricia looked up from her desk. Her expression shifted from bored to alert, but not in the way Maya expected. Ma'am, calm down. Fill out these forms. He needs help now. Please, he's only 3. Insurance card? The woman fumbled through her purse, hands shaking. I have Medicaid. It should be here. Here it is. Patricia took the card, swiped it, stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. The child's wheezing intensified. This card shows inactive coverage. That's not possible. I just renewed. The system says inactive. I can't admit him without... My son can't breathe. Maya watched the child's lips. They were starting to turn blue at the edges. Cyanosis. Oxygen deprivation. This wasn't insurance verification protocol. This was a medical emergency being treated as a billing problem. Maya stood up. Her head swam, but she forced herself steady. Excuse me. That child needs immediate treatment. EMTALA requires... Patricia's head snapped toward her. You're still here? I thought we told you. That child has cyanosis. If you don't treat him in the next 3 minutes, you're violating federal law and endangering a minor. The waiting room went silent. Patricia's face flushed crimson. Are you a doctor? I don't need to be a doctor to recognize a child who can't breathe. Then perhaps you should mind your own. This is my business. That mother asked for help. You're denying it. I'm a witness. The young mother looked at Maya with desperate hope. Please, is she right? Can they refuse to help him? Maya kept her eyes on Patricia. No, they cannot. Federal law requires emergency treatment regardless of insurance status. It's called EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. Patricia's mouth opened, closed. She looked around the waiting room. Every phone was pointed at her now. Not just Jennifer's live stream. Everyone. Patricia made a decision. She pressed the intercom. Dr. Martinez to intake. Pediatric respiratory distress. Within 90 seconds, a doctor appeared and rushed the child into treatment. The mother grabbed Maya's hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't know. You shouldn't have to know, Maya said quietly. They should have helped him immediately. The mother disappeared through the double doors. Maya sat back down. Her head was pounding worse now. The dizziness had intensified, but she'd just proven something crucial. Patricia could get immediate help when she wanted to. She just chose not to. When witnessing injustice puts you at greater risk, do you stay silent to protect yourself? Or speak up knowing it might cost you? Maya sat alone in the corner of the waiting room, phone in her lap, watching. Patricia had disappeared into the back office immediately after the child was taken for treatment. Through the glass partition, Maya could see her on the phone. Animated. Angry. Every few seconds, Patricia would glance toward the waiting room, toward Maya. This was escalating. Maya pulled up her evidence files. 3 recordings now. Timestamps. Patricia's voice. The child's mother's desperation. Dr. Chen's intervention attempt. Everything documented. But at what cost? Her vision was getting worse. The edges of the room blurred when she turned her head too quickly. The headache had evolved from throbbing to sharp ice pick pains behind her right eye. Classic signs of worsening concussion. She checked her phone. 1:47 a.m. 2 hours and 55 minutes since the accident. Maybe 3 hours before this became dangerous. Maybe less. She could end this, right now. Walk up to that desk, show her bar card, say 5 words. I'm Dr. James Johnson's wife. Everything would change instantly. Treatment, apologies, maybe even an escort to James's office where he could examine her privately, away from all of this. But then what? Patricia would claim the whole thing was a misunderstanding. Insurance verification takes time. We were following standard protocol. If she'd just been patient. The other patients who'd filed complaints hadn't had video, hadn't had witnesses, hadn't had the training to document discrimination in real time. They'd had their word against the hospital's procedures, and procedures always won. Maya had something they didn't. Proof. But only if she kept going. She thought about Judge Keating's dismissal of the housing case. Anecdotal testimony, however compelling, does not constitute systematic evidence. This wasn't anecdotal anymore. This was systematic. Patricia's refusal to treat her. The altered intake notes Maya had glimpsed on the computer screen she'd seen Patricia type, patient became aggressive, when Maya had done nothing but ask questions calmly. The intimidation of Dr. Chen. The near denial of care for the child until public pressure forced action. Every piece was documented. But documentation required time. And time was something Maya's head injury wasn't giving her much of. She closed her eyes. Tried to think through the haze of pain. How much harm am I willing to endure to prove harm exists? It was the same question she asked every client who wanted to pursue a discrimination case. It's going to be hard, she'd tell them. They'll question your motives. They'll dig into your past. They'll make you relive the worst moments over and over. Are you prepared for that? Most said yes. Many gave up halfway through. Because fighting the system meant letting it hurt you again and again, publicly, while you collected evidence that it was hurting you. Maya had asked 47 people to do that for the Metro Health case. Now she was asking herself, and the answer was getting harder with every passing minute. At 1:52 a.m., Maya made her decision. She wasn't leaving. She wasn't revealing her identity. Not yet. But she was going to make them confront what they were doing. She stood up slowly because standing fast made the room tilt and walked to the intake desk. Patricia looked up. Her expression was pure contempt. Still here? Yes. Still bleeding. Still waiting for the treatment I'm legally entitled to. I've explained. You've explained that my insurance can't be verified, so I'd like to pay out of pocket. Cash. Patricia blinked. That wasn't in her script. Our self-pay rate for emergency services is, I don't care what it costs. I'm injured. I'm requesting treatment. I'm willing to pay. Please provide me with the rate sheet and intake paperwork. Patricia's jaw tightened. It doesn't work that way. We need to verify. EMTALA doesn't require insurance verification for emergency medical screening. Federal law. 42 U.S.C. Section 1395DD. Would you like me to recite the specific language? The waiting room went quiet. Patricia leaned forward. Her voice dropped, but not enough. You think you're smart? Throwing around legal terms? Let me tell you something. I think I'm a patient requesting care, that's all. You're a troublemaker. I've been doing this for 30 years and I can spot— Maya held up her phone. Recording light on. Please continue. You were saying you can spot something about me? Patricia's mouth snapped shut. Maya kept her voice level, calm. The voice she used in depositions when opposing counsel was about to say something catastrophically stupid. I'm requesting emergency medical screening and treatment. I'm willing to provide payment. I'm documenting your response. What happens next is your choice. Patricia stared at her. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone in the room felt it. Not because Maya had revealed who she was, but because she'd made it impossible for Patricia to hide behind protocol anymore. Either treat the patient or explicitly refuse on camera in front of witnesses with federal law clearly stated. Patricia grabbed the phone on her desk. Security to intake. We have a situation. Maya didn't move, didn't argue, just stood there, phone recording, waiting. She'd crossed the line. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next, she'd chosen it, deliberately, carefully, with full knowledge that this moment would define everything that followed. The security guard appeared within 60 seconds. The security guard was older. Tired eyes. Name tag, Robert Mills. He looked at Maya, then at Patricia, then back at Maya's bleeding head. What's the problem? Patricia spoke before Maya could. This woman is refusing to leave after being told her insurance can't be verified. She's harassing staff and disrupting— I'm requesting medical treatment for a head injury, Maya said calmly. I've been waiting 2 hours and 7 minutes. Robert looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, if the nurse says there's an insurance issue— I offered to pay cash. She refused. That's not what happened, Patricia interjected. She became argumentative and started recording staff without consent. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state for recording, Maya said. I'm legally permitted to record conversations I'm a part of. Robert's discomfort deepened. Look, I don't know about all that legal stuff. I just know if the nursing staff says you need to leave, then you're complicit in denying emergency medical care in violation of federal law. The words hung in the air. Robert's hand moved to his radio. I'm going to need to call the police. Maya's heart rate spiked, but her voice stayed steady. That's your choice. But I want to be clear. I'm injured. I'm requesting care. I'm not threatening anyone, and I'm being removed by force. Correct? You're trespassing. In a hospital emergency room, where I came for treatment after a car accident. Robert pressed the radio button. This is Mills at ER intake. Need police assistance for a trespass situation. The dispatcher's response crackled through. Units en route. ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Maya sat back down in her chair. Her phone was still recording. Jennifer's live stream viewer count had climbed to 15,000. And somewhere in this hospital, Maya's husband was working, completely unaware that his wife was about to be arrested. The clock said 1:58 a.m. She had minutes to decide if she'd let this go all the way. At 2:03 a.m., Patricia made her fatal mistake. She didn't just wait for the police. She decided to justify herself, publicly. You know what your problem is? Patricia said, loud enough for the entire waiting room to hear. You people come in here thinking you deserve special treatment. You want everything for free. You don't want to follow the rules. Maya looked up slowly. You people? Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything. I'm asking for clarification. What did you mean by you people? Patricia's face flushed. People who don't have insurance. People who— I have insurance. You refused to verify it. People who come in here acting entitled. I asked for medical treatment. That's not entitlement. That's why emergency rooms exist. Jennifer's live stream exploded with comments. Did she just say, "you people"? This is racist as hell. Someone tell me this is fake. Patricia realized her mistake too late. She tried to backtrack. I meant, that's not what you're putting words in my mouth. But Maya wasn't attacking. She was documenting. For the record, Maya said clearly, it's now 4 a.m. I've been waiting 2 hours and 12 minutes for treatment. I offered to pay cash. I've been told my insurance can't be verified, that I should try a free clinic, and now that I'm part of you people who want special treatment. She looked directly at Patricia. Is that an accurate summary? Patricia's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Another nurse appeared from the back younger, looking horrified. Patricia, maybe we should just— Don't, Patricia snapped. This woman is trying to cause a scene. She probably wasn't even in an accident. Look at her, barely bleeding. Probably did it herself for attention. The accusation was so absurd it took Maya a moment to process. You're suggesting I injured myself to get attention in a hospital at 2 a.m. I've seen it before. People looking for drugs, looking for a lawsuit, coming in here with alleged injuries. My injury is visible. There's blood on my face. The police you called will see it when they arrive. And they'll see a woman who refused to leave when asked, a woman who harassed staff, a woman who's probably on something. I'm sober. That's what they all say. The room went dead silent. Even Robert, the security guard, looked uncomfortable now. Maya's phone was recording everything. Jennifer's live stream was recording everything. 15,000 people were watching Patricia accuse a bleeding woman of faking injury, seeking drugs, and being intoxicated. Without a shred of evidence. Based purely on assumptions, Patricia wasn't even trying to hide anymore. Outside, sirens approached. 2 police officers entered at 2:06 a.m. Officer Rodriguez, mid-30s, body camera on. Officer Kim, younger, notebook already out. Robert Mills immediately pointed at Maya. That's her. She's refusing to leave. Rodriguez looked at Maya, at the blood on her temple, at her calm posture, at the phone in her hand still recording. Then he looked at Patricia. What's the situation? Patricia launched into her script. This individual came in claiming to have a car accident. We attempted to verify her insurance per standard protocol. She became agitated, harassed staff, refused to cooperate with intake procedures, and began recording staff without consent. One-party consent state, Maya said quietly. Recording is legal. Rodriguez held up a hand. Let her finish, please. Patricia continued. When we explained she'd need to wait for verification, she became hostile, started citing laws, threatening staff with legal action. We asked her to leave. She refused. That's trespassing. Rodriguez turned to Maya. Ma'am, is this accurate? No. Your version? Maya kept her voice level, professional, the voice she used in court. I arrived at 11:52 p.m. with a head injury from a car accident. I provided my insurance information at intake. After 90 minutes with no treatment or triage, I inquired about the delay. I was told my insurance couldn't be verified and that I should try a free clinic instead. I offered to pay cash. That offer was refused. I requested treatment under EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which requires hospitals to provide emergency screening regardless of payment status. At that point, security was called. Rodriguez's expression shifted slightly. He looked at Patricia. Is she injured? She claims to be. I can see blood on her head. Is she injured? Patricia hesitated. It's not severe. Has she been medically screened? We were waiting for insurance. That's not what I asked. Rodriguez's tone had changed. Has a medical professional examined her injury? Silence. Officer Kim stopped writing and looked up. Rodriguez turned to Robert Mills. How long has she been here? About 2 hours, Robert admitted quietly. And in 2 hours, no one's looked at a head injury? Patricia scrambled. We have procedures. We can't just admit everyone who... She's not asking to be admitted. She's asking to be screened. That's federal law. Rodriguez looked at his partner. Kim, call a supervisor. Wait! Patricia's voice rose. You're not hospital administration. You can't dictate our medical procedures. I'm not dictating medical procedures. I'm observing a potential EMTALA violation. Rodriguez turned to Maya. Ma'am, have you been advised of your right to file a complaint with the Federal Office of Civil Rights? Maya's breath caught. He knew the law. No, officer. I have not been advised of that right. Rodriguez looked at Patricia. You need to get a supervisor down here, now. This is outrageous. I've been a nurse for 30 years. Then you should know EMTALA. Rodriguez's voice was flat. Supervisor, now, or I'm filing a report myself. Patricia's face went white. The system she'd weaponized for 2 hours was suddenly turning against her, not because of Maya's identity, because of Maya's documentation and an officer who actually knew the law. At 2:11 a.m., the ER supervisor arrived. Linda Park, 50s, exhausted expression. She took one look at the scene police, phones recording, Patricia's defensive posture, and Maya could see her mentally calculating damage control. What's happening here? Officer Rodriguez gestured to Maya. This patient has been waiting over 2 hours for medical screening of a head injury. Claims she's been denied care. Linda's eyes flicked to Patricia, then to Maya, then to the live stream Jennifer was still broadcasting. 22,000 viewers now. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding, Linda said carefully. Patricia, why hasn't this patient been triaged? Insurance verification issue, standard protocol. Protocol is to triage first, verify later. Linda's voice had an edge now, especially for visible injuries. The patient became hostile. I have video evidence of every interaction, Maya said quietly. I can provide it to hospital administration, the police, or the Federal Office of Civil Rights. Your choice. Linda's expression froze. She looked at the other people in the waiting room. Witnesses. All of them. Would anyone like to provide a statement about what happened here tonight? Silence. The teenage girl who'd been watching everything suddenly found her phone fascinating. The elderly man who'd been there when Maya first arrived studied his shoes. The woman with the sprained ankle who'd been called back for treatment after only 30 minutes, while Maya bled in the corner, pretended to be asleep. Jennifer kept live streaming but said nothing. They'd all seen it. Every moment. The discrimination. The hostility. The denial of care. But not one person would speak. Maya understood. She'd seen it in depositions, in witness interviews, in courtrooms. Fear. Fear of retaliation. Fear of being next. Fear that speaking up would make them targets. The elderly man had been coming to this hospital for 20 years. What if they remembered him? What if his care suffered? The teenage girl might need emergency services someday. Would this hospital treat her differently if she testified against them? The woman with the sprained ankle was still waiting for X-ray results. Would those results suddenly get lost if she made trouble? Silence was survival. Linda Park knew it. She smiled, confidence returning. Well, since no one else seems to have concerns, perhaps we should focus on resolving this patient's issue. Ma'am, if you'd like to follow me, we can get you triaged and... No. Everyone turned to look at Jennifer. She stood up, phone still recording, hands shaking but voice steady. I'm a witness. I've been recording since 12:47 a.m. I have everything. The nurse Patricia, she said, you people want special treatment. She said the patient was probably faking injury. She refused treatment multiple times. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm not letting this disappear. Linda's smile vanished. Miss, I appreciate your concern, but 23,000 people are watching right now, Jennifer said. You can't make us all forget." She looked at Maya. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Maya's throat tightened. Sometimes courage wasn't being fearless. Sometimes courage was being terrified and speaking anyway. Maya checked her phone. 2:17 a.m. 2 hours and 25 minutes since the accident. Her vision was worse now. The lights in the waiting room had halos. When she turned her head, the world lagged behind like a scratched video file. Classic progression. Concussion worsening. She had maybe 2 hours before this became critical, but she had a bigger problem. In 14 hours and 43 minutes, she needed to be in federal court, coherent and prepared, arguing the most important case of her career before a judge who'd already demonstrated skepticism toward discrimination claims. If she revealed her identity now, if she ended this by showing her bar card and getting treatment, she'd have evidence of discrimination at St. Margaret's. But she'd lose the class certification hearing, because Judge Keating would ask the obvious question. "Ms. Johnson, if you believe healthcare discrimination is systematic, why did you resolve your own case by revealing your privilege? Doesn't that prove the system works for people like you?" Maya would have no answer. Worse, every plaintiff in the Metro Health case would know their attorney chose to use her connections rather than fight the same battle she'd asked them to fight. The case would collapse. Not legally, morally. But if she didn't get treatment soon... Maya pressed her fingers to her temple. The blood had mostly stopped, but the pressure inside her skull felt like it was building. Concussion protocol was clear. Medical evaluation within hours, not days. She'd seen cases where people waited, thought they were fine, then collapsed 12 hours later with brain bleeds they didn't know they had. Her phone buzzed. "James, long shift. Should be home by 6 a.m. Love you." He was here, somewhere in this hospital, maybe 3 floors up, maybe 2 hallways away. She could text him right now. 3 words. ER. Need help. He'd be down here in 90 seconds. The discrimination would stop instantly, but the case would die. 47 plaintiffs would lose their chance, and every future victim of healthcare discrimination would be told, "Prove it, but not by using your connections, and not by asking for special treatment. Just prove it." An impossible standard. Maya looked at Jennifer, still live streaming, hands shaking but holding steady. She looked at Linda Park, calculating how to make this problem disappear. She looked at Officer Rodriguez, waiting for direction. 26,000 viewers watching now. 2 hours until potential medical emergency. 14 hours until career-defining court appearance. And one choice: protect herself or protect the case. There was no option that saved both. How do you choose between self-preservation and the justice you've promised others? Maya closed her eyes, made her decision, opened them again. "I'm not leaving until I receive medical screening or until I'm physically removed." The clock kept running. At 2:23 a.m., Linda Park made a critical error. She tried to access Maya's file to resolve the insurance issue. She pulled up the hospital system on the intake computer, typed in Maya's name, and froze. Her face went pale. She looked at Maya, then back at the screen, then at Patricia. "Patricia, can I speak with you privately?" "We're in the middle of..." "Now." They stepped into the back office, glass partition. Maya couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see Linda's body language. Angry, frantic, pointing at the screen. Patricia's defensive posture crumbled into confusion, then panic. Officer Rodriguez noticed too. "What's going on?" "I don't know," Maya said honestly, but she had a suspicion. Hospital staff had spousal emergency contact information. It was standard on every patient file. Emergency contact, Dr. James Johnson, Chief of Emergency Medicine, St. Margaret's Hospital. Someone had finally read past the insurance section. Linda returned, her professional smile now forced, strained. "Ms. Johnson, I apologize for the confusion. There was a system error. We'd be happy to get you triaged immediately. A system error that took 2.5 hours to discover? These things happen. If you'd just... I'd like the name and title of whoever accessed my file just now, and I'd like documentation of what system error occurred. Linda's smile cracked. That's internal hospital information. It's my medical record. HIPAA gives me the right to know who accessed it and when. Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. She's correct. Patient has a right to an access log. Linda's jaw tightened. I'll need to consult with hospital administration. At 2:30 in the morning? Maya's voice was still calm, still professional. Or are you stalling while you figure out how to explain the sudden change in treatment? The waiting room was dead silent. Linda looked at the cameras, the live stream, the 28,000 people watching. She was trapped. If she admitted they'd seen Maya's emergency contact, she'd confirm they'd denied care to the chief of emergency medicine's wife, which would be a public relations nightmare and potential discrimination case. If she didn't explain the system error, she'd have to explain why Maya suddenly became worth treating after being ignored for 2.5 hours. There was no good answer. From the back office, Maya heard a phone ring. Then Patricia's voice, loud and panicked. I didn't know! The system didn't show! How was I supposed to? Another voice, male, commanding. Where is she? Linda's face went gray. The office door opened. Dr. James Johnson stepped into the waiting room. Still in scrubs, stethoscope around his neck. Expression Maya had only seen once before, when a resident nearly killed a patient through negligence. He looked at Maya, at the blood on her temple, at the waiting room she'd been sitting in for 2.5 hours. His wife, bleeding, denied care, in his hospital. James crossed the waiting room in 4 strides. Maya, Jesus Christ, what happened? He reached for her face, doctor instincts taking over, but Maya pulled back. Don't. You're bleeding. I know. How long have you been here? 2 hours and 31 minutes. James's expression shifted from concern to fury. He turned to Linda Park. Why wasn't I called? Why wasn't she treated? Linda's mouth opened, closed. Dr. Johnson, there was a miscommunication. A miscommunication that left my wife bleeding in a waiting room for over 2 hours? His voice rose. Where's the triage assessment? Where's the intake documentation? We were verifying insurance. She's on my insurance. It's in the system. What the hell were you verifying? The waiting room was riveted, but Maya felt everything she'd built start to collapse. Because now it wasn't about a patient denied care. It was about the chief of emergency medicine's wife denied care. The optics had changed. The narrative had changed. Privilege had entered the equation. James knelt in front of her. Maya, let me examine you. You could have a concussion. I know I have a concussion. Then why didn't you? He stopped, looked at her phone, still recording, looked at the cameras pointed at them, at Jennifer's live stream. Understanding dawned across his face. You were investigating. Maya said nothing. The Metro Health case, the complaints, you were documenting. His voice dropped. Maya, you could have texted me. You didn't need to. Yes, I did. You're injured. So were the other 47 people who filed complaints. They didn't have anyone to call. They endured this alone. How could I ask them to testify about experiences I wasn't willing to go through myself? James closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were filled with something worse than anger, grief. You risked your health to prove a point. I risked my health to gather evidence the system can't dismiss. At what cost? His hand trembled as he reached for her again. Maya, you could have... I'm fine. You're not fine. Let me examine. Not here. Maya. Not here. Her voice was firm. The moment you treat me, everyone watching will say I only got care because of who I'm married to. that I used privilege to escape discrimination, that the system works fine if you just have connections. I don't care what people think. I care! Her voice cracked. 47 people are counting on me to prove the system is broken. If I walk out of here on your arm, I prove the opposite. James stared at her. The silence stretched. Then he stood up, stepped back. You're right. His voice was hollow. You're absolutely right. He turned to Linda Park. Ms. Johnson is requesting emergency medical screening under EMTALA. As Chief of Emergency Medicine, I'm formally documenting that this patient presented with head trauma at 11:52 p.m. and was denied triage for 2 hours and 33 minutes. Linda went pale. Dr. Johnson. I'm also requesting a full incident report, and I'll be filing my own complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. He looked at Patricia. You denied care to a patient based on assumptions, not medical assessment. Assumptions. Then he walked away, left Maya sitting there, bleeding, alone, because that's what the case required. Maya sat alone in the waiting room for 17 minutes. James didn't come back. She knew why. He was giving her what she needed, evidence untainted by intervention. If he stayed, if he hovered, if he used his authority to force treatment, it would undermine everything. But knowing why didn't make it hurt less. Her phone buzzed. Text from James. I'm in my office. Doors open if you need me, but I won't come unless you ask. She stared at the message. 3 years ago, they'd had this exact argument. Maya had taken a case defending a woman who'd been fired after reporting sexual harassment. The woman's employer was a major hospital donor, James's hospital. The board had pressured him. Talk to your wife. Make her understand this is bad for everyone. James had come home, exhausted, and said, I can't tell you how to do your job, but I'm asking, is this case worth what it's going to cost us? Maya had looked at him and said, if I only fight battles that don't cost me anything, then I'm not really fighting. I'm performing. He'd nodded, kissed her forehead, never mentioned it again. Maya had won that case. The woman got reinstated. The hospital reformed its policies. And for 6 months afterward, James faced cold shoulders at board meetings, subtle retaliation, whispered suggestions that maybe his wife should be more careful about who she represents. He never complained, never asked her to stop, but she'd seen what it cost him. Now she was doing it again. Except this time she was the client, the victim, the one who needed help. And she was refusing it because accepting help would undermine the help she was trying to give others. The logic was sound. The cost was brutal. Maya looked around the waiting room. Jennifer still live streaming, though her viewer count had dropped to 19,000. Most people had seen what they came for, the confrontation, the reveal, the drama. They weren't interested in what came after. The elderly man was finally called back for treatment. The teenage girl had fallen asleep, head against her mother's shoulder. Officer Rodriguez was writing his report, occasionally glancing at Maya with something that looked like respect, and Maya was bleeding, dizzy, alone, but not empty-handed. She had 2 hours and 40 minutes of documented discrimination. She had Patricia's "you people" comment on video. She had the false accusations of drug seeking. She had the refusal to accept cash payment. She had a police officer's confirmation of EMTALA violation. She had 28,000 people who'd witnessed it live. This wasn't anecdotal testimony. This wasn't one person's word against institutional procedures. This was systematic discrimination, documented in real time, impossible to deny. Judge Keating had wanted systematic evidence? Maya had just experienced it firsthand. At 2:54 a.m., a different nurse, not Patricia, approached Maya. Young, nervous. Name tag, Sarah Mitchell, RN. Ms. Johnson, I'm here to do your medical screening. I apologize for the wait. That should never have happened. Maya stood up, let herself be led to an exam room. The investigation was over. Now came the reckoning. The exam room was standard, sterile, cold fluorescent lights. Sarah Mitchell worked efficiently. Blood pressure, pupil response, neurological assessment. Mild concussion, she confirmed quietly. You need rest, no screens. Follow up in 48 hours if symptoms worsen. She cleaned the wound, applied butterfly bandages. Her hands were gentle, but Maya could see the shame in her eyes. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I was working the back. I didn't know you were out there. I should have checked. It's not your fault. It is. We're supposed to triage everyone within 15 minutes. That's protocol. What Patricia did... She stopped herself. I shouldn't say anything. You should, Maya said, but I understand why you won't. Sarah finished the bandaging. You're all set. Discharge papers will be ready in 10 minutes. She left. Maya sat alone in the exam room, adrenaline finally wearing off, reality setting in. She'd done it. She'd documented everything. But now came the hard part. At 3:12 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Not Sarah, not James. A woman in a business suit, late 50s, perfectly styled despite the hour. Ms. Johnson, I'm Eleanor Hartwell, hospital administrator and legal counsel. May I come in? Maya's exhaustion vanished. Of course. Eleanor closed the door, sat down, pulled out a tablet. I've reviewed the incident reports, the video footage, and the live stream recording. I want to apologize on behalf of St. Margaret's Hospital for the treatment you received tonight. It was unacceptable. We are prepared to offer... Stop. Eleanor paused. Maya sat up straighter. Before you continue, I need to clarify something. I'm not here seeking a settlement or apology in my personal capacity. I'm sorry? Maya reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out the credentials she'd kept hidden all night. Her bar card, Massachusetts Attorney Registration, Specialty, Civil Rights Law. She slid them across the table. Eleanor's face went very still as she read them. Maya Johnson, Esquire, Senior Attorney, Civil Rights Legal Defense Fund. Maya's voice was calm, professional. I specialize in healthcare discrimination cases, specifically systematic denial of care based on race, gender, and perceived socioeconomic status. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly. You were investigating us? No. I was in a car accident. I came here for treatment. What happened after that? Maya gestured to the bandage on her head. That was entirely your staff's choice. But you didn't identify yourself. I identified myself as a patient requesting emergency medical care. That should have been sufficient. Maya leaned forward. The fact that I'm an attorney, or that I'm married to your chief of emergency medicine, is irrelevant to EMTALA compliance, isn't it? Eleanor said nothing. Maya pulled out her phone, opened the voice recording app. I have 2 hours and 42 minutes of documented interactions. I have video from multiple sources, including a live stream with over 28,000 witnesses. I have Officer Rodriguez's incident report confirming potential EMTALA violations. I have testimony from Jennifer Martinez, who witnessed the entire incident. She paused. And I have 14 prior complaints filed against this hospital following the exact same pattern, all dismissed, all claiming the same discrimination I experienced tonight. Eleanor's professional composure cracked. What do you want? I don't want anything for myself. I want systematic reform. We can implement training. Training isn't enough. I want a comprehensive, enforceable reform plan. Third-party oversight, regular audits, transparent reporting of ER wait times by patient demographics, mandatory body cameras for all patient-facing staff, and binding arbitration for discrimination complaints, not internal review. Eleanor's eyes widened. That's extraordinarily invasive. It's exactly what hospitals should be doing voluntarily. Maya's voice hardened. You have a choice, Ms. Hartwell. Accept these reforms, implement them under federal monitoring, and rebuild trust with the communities you've failed. Or I file a formal complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, the Joint Commission, and the State Medical Board. I add St. Margaret's to the class action lawsuit I'm currently arguing against Metro Health System. I make sure every single media outlet that covered tonight's live stream knows that this hospital's chief legal counsel tried to settle discrimination claims with an NDA instead of addressing systematic failures. Maya stood up. And I make sure Judge Marianne Keating, who's hearing my case in 11 hours, sees first-hand evidence that healthcare discrimination isn't anecdotal. It's systematic. It's documented. And it happened to an attorney who knew her rights. The room went silent. Eleanor stared at her. You used yourself as evidence. I used myself as a patient. Your staff turned me into evidence. Eleanor looked down at her tablet, at the videos, at the incident reports. At 2 hours of discrimination so well documented, there was no room for interpretation. If we agree to the reforms, the publicity? I don't care about publicity. I care about change. Maya moved toward the door. You have 48 hours to provide a written reform plan. If it's genuine and enforceable, we move forward collaboratively. If it's performative, we move forward in federal court. And Nurse Patricia Walsh? Maya paused at the door. That's your decision, but I'll say this. Patricia didn't create your system. She just enforced it. If you fire her without addressing the culture that empowered her, you've learned nothing. She opened the door. In the hallway, James, waiting. He'd heard everything through the door he'd deliberately left ajar. Their eyes met. He didn't apologize for listening. She didn't apologize for what she'd done. You need rest, he said quietly. I need to prepare for court. Maya. 11 hours, James. I have 11 hours to turn tonight into a case Judge Keating can't dismiss. She walked past him. Behind her, Eleanor Hartwell sat alone in the exam room, staring at the credentials of the woman they'd treated as powerless. The woman who'd never been powerless at all. She'd just chosen to experience powerlessness to prove it existed. At 4:47 p.m. the next day, Judge Marianne Keating looked up from the evidence Maya had submitted that morning. Video footage, time-stamped recordings, Officer Rodriguez's incident report, Jennifer's live stream data showing 31,000 peak viewers, and Maya's own medical records from St. Margaret's Hospital documenting a 2-hour, 42-minute delay in emergency care. Ms. Johnson, Judge Keating said slowly, you subjected yourself to the exact discrimination you're alleging in the Metro Health case. I didn't subject myself to anything, Your Honor. I sought emergency medical care. The discrimination was a choice made by hospital staff. You could have identified yourself at any point. My identity as an attorney is irrelevant to my right to emergency medical treatment, just as my patients' identities are irrelevant to theirs. Judge Keating was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at the defense attorneys representing Metro Health System. Counsel, your previous argument was that the plaintiffs couldn't prove systematic discrimination, that their experiences were isolated incidents. Do you maintain that position? The lead defense attorney, a man who'd spent 6 months arguing Maya's case, was anecdotal and insufficient, opened his mouth, closed it. Your Honor, the St. Margaret's incident is a separate matter. Is it? Judge Keating's voice was sharp. Ms. Johnson documented the exact pattern her 47 plaintiffs describe. Insurance verification delays, accusations of drug seeking, suggestions to seek care elsewhere, hostile treatment, all captured on video, all witnessed by thousands. She closed the file. Class certification is granted. This case will proceed to trial with all 47 plaintiffs. Discovery will include patient wait time data, demographic analysis, and staff training records for all Metro Health facilities. The defense table went silent. Maya allowed herself one breath of relief, then got back to work. 10. 3 months later. Patricia Walsh was not fired. She was placed on administrative leave pending completion of a mandatory bias training program. Upon return, she'd work under direct supervision for 12 months, with quarterly evaluations. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability. St. Margaret's Hospital implemented every reform Maya had demanded: body cameras, third-party oversight, transparent demographic reporting. More importantly, they funded a community advisory board composed of patients from underserved neighborhoods. People who'd experienced the discrimination firsthand now had direct input into hospital policies. The Metro Health case settled 3 weeks before trial. Undisclosed terms, but the settlement included systematic reforms across 15 hospitals in 4 states. 47 plaintiffs received compensation. More importantly, they received acknowledgement that their experiences had been real, documented, and unacceptable. Jennifer Martinez was offered a job at the Civil Rights Legal Defense Fund as a community outreach coordinator. She accepted. Dr. Michael Chen, the resident, who'd tried to intervene, completed his residency and joined an organization providing free emergency care in underserved communities. And Maya returned to Marlene's diner, not the hospital cafeteria, but the small restaurant 3 blocks from her office where she'd eaten lunch every Tuesday for 8 years. Same booth, same waitress, same order. The waitress Gloria, 63, who'd worked there for 20 years, brought Maya's usual without asking. Then she did something she'd never done before. She sat down. "I saw what you did. At the hospital. I've been treated like that before. Never knew I could fight back." Maya looked at her. Really looked. "You always could. You just needed someone to show you it was possible. When you have the power to end injustice immediately, is choosing to endure it brave or foolish? And who gets to make that choice for themselves?"
This was a fictional dramatized story, but the message is real. Now I want you to take. Was it justice? Or was it too far? Comment below, hit like, and subscribe to Black Voices Uncut Plus for the next uncut posts.